The night began with a stillness that belied the chaos soon to be unleashed, a calm so deceptive that one could easily dismiss it as merely the pause before an ordinary storm. In the sprawling metropolis, where neon lights usually cut through the darkness like vibrant arrows slicing the night, a surreptitious shadow swallowed the entire city. This was not the moonless kind of dark that falls away quietly at the beginning of winter. This was an active, almost malevolent darkness that had been engineered to consume every stray sliver of illumination. The hour when the lights went out was not marked by a gradual dimming or the plaintive hum of a failing generator. Instead, it arrived with the abruptness of an unseen hand, plunging every street, every building, every soul into an oppressive void. Within the heart of the city stood an aging apartment building, its brick facade a testament to years of whispered legends and half-heard secrets. The structure had weathered countless storms and seasonal shifts, and yet it now faced an adversary unlike any before. A blackout that was as total as it was unexpected. As the lights vanished, a peculiar blend of trepidation and curiosity gripped the inhabitants. In that moment, every watt of electricity, every flicker that had once represented safety and comfort, was stripped away, replaced by an eerie and unnatural darkness that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. In the beginning, the residents had assumed it was a temporary power failure, a glitch in the city's infrastructure that would quickly be remedied by the diligent work of utility crews. However, as minutes turned to hours, and the usual emergency luminescence stubbornly refused to ignite, the building's occupants began to sense that they were at the mercy of something far more sinister. The corridors, once bustling with the distant sounds of everyday life, the murmurs of conversation, and the clatter of footsteps, now echoed with a deep and unsettling silence, punctuated only by the soft, almost imperceptible hum of something that defied simple explanation. Within one of the many dim hallways, the aged wallpaper, its faded patterns once cheerful under the glow of streetlights, now seemed to seethe with secrets. Shadows took on an organic quality, shifting and distorting as if in conversation with each other. It was during these surreal moments that the residents first began to notice oddities, the quiet murmur of whispered warnings that came from nowhere and everywhere at once, the inexplicable movement of household objects that defied gravity and logic, and a pervasive sense that an unwelcome observer had crept into their lives. Every creak of the floorboards and every rustle of the wind outside became an omen, marking time with a chilling cadence. The narrative of the night grew ever more complex as the clock's ticking became a relentless countdown, a measured, almost methodical reminder that the darkness was not a passive absence, but a calculated force. It was as if an unseen hand had orchestrated each moment of terror, pacing a series of well-timed occurrences that teased the building's inhabitants with the probability of danger. With each passing minute, the building became a canvas for the unknown, a laboratory for fear where the line between the natural and the supernatural blurred into an indistinguishable haze. Under the cloak of night, the very architecture of the building seemed to rebel against its own history, exuding an aura of foreboding that transformed every familiar corner into a potential trap. In the low-lit recesses of one deserted staircase, a solitary figure moved with the hesitant steps of one trying to piece together a fragmented dream. The figure's passage was marked by a slow, deliberate pace that resonated with the heartbeat of despair. Every door passed, every uncertain step taken on creaking wood floors, was accompanied by the inexplicable sensation of being watched by unseen eyes, dwelling in the periphery of darkness. At a moment that felt suspended in time, an icy draft brushed against the skin, weaving through corridors and stairwells with an almost intentional precision. It was a reminder that even as the physical manifestations of light were vanishing, the intangible power of nature, and something far more arcane, had not released its grip on the building. The residents in their secluded apartments began to piece together the puzzle of this macabre performance. They recognized that within the confines of this ancient structure, a series of clandestine events was unfolding, a series that hinted at a deliberate act rather than a mere coincidence of failing infrastructure. Every whispered speculation in the dark reflected a growing realization. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was not an ordinary blackout at all. As the minutes dragged into prolonged hours, the interplay between light and shadow took on a life of its own. The emergency lights, those harbingers of hope in many dire circumstances, had not only failed to illuminate the building, but had, in their absence, magnified every flicker of movement within the oppressive gloom. The phenomenon was both mesmerizing and horrifying. Objects that would normally be inert and stationary began to exhibit a subtle, unsettling dynamism. A stray coffee mug wobbled on a counter as if nudged by an invisible force. A photograph that once hung confidently on a wall now tilted at a precarious angle, its subject's eyes seeming to follow the disoriented observer through the dismal room. In these strange, disconcerting moments, the narrative of the building transformed into one of living horror. The dark corridors, unmoored from the assurance of man-made light, became the backdrop for strange occurrences that defied every known law of physics and reason. It was as though the darkness itself was animated by an otherworldly intelligence intent on rewriting the familiar script of daily life into a tale of dread and uncertainty. The absence of light, it seemed, was an invitation for anomalies to surface, and each anomaly was a silent pronouncement that the boundaries of safety had been irrevocably crossed. The building, with its creaking joints and time-worn foundations, bore silent witness to the unfolding nightmare. Every element, the rattling pipes, the brittle floorboards, the whispering winds that snuck through the cracks, conspired to create an ambiance thick with foreboding. The residents, huddled together in their respective quarters, yet united in the shared experience of isolation, felt the vast expanse of the darkness encroach upon not just their homes but their very souls. There was no immediate salvation, no siren or beacon of hope to break the oppressive spell. Only the expansive silence and the unyielding weight of the unknown prevailed. In the labyrinthine hallways of the building, the interplay of light and dark began to form a pattern that unspooled like an ancient scroll, inscribed with cryptic warnings and ominous portents. Each shadow on the wall, each tremor in the darkness, served as a subtle reminder of the delicate balance between security and exposure. The natural human instinct to retreat into the safety of the known was overridden by a compelling desire to understand the cause behind this calculated orchestration of night. Amid the shadows, suspense was the only certainty, and every sliver of transient light was both a comfort and an igniter of latent terror. For one resident, a thoughtful and observant individual whose daily routines had been punctuated by the mundane predictability of city life, the blackout became a prism through which deep-seated fears and long-forgotten memories were refracted. The individual recognized that this was not simply a power outage, but an event heavy with portent, a moment when the normally latent energies of the universe surged forth in an unbidden demonstration of their might. In this extraordinary hour, the boundaries between reality and the spectral world dissolved. Being confined within an aging apartment building that seemed suddenly unmoored from time and space, the individual felt the eerie sensation of phantoms of the past rising to reclaim territory that was never truly lost. Every detail of that evening was etched with an otherworldly clarity, the jagged patterns created by moonlight filtering through broken windows, the intricate dance of shadows that crept along walls and ceilings, and the hushed symphony of murmured warnings that resonated in the emptiness. All of these elements combined to form a tableau that was as surreal as it was alarming. The phenomenon was not chaotic. It was as if the darkness had been meticulously choreographed by an unseen architect whose intentions were relentlessly obscured by layers of mystery. The fear that permeated each corridor and seeped through every closed door was palpable, tangible in its intensity. a visceral reminder that sometimes the most terrifying adversary is not one that is seen, but one that is felt. Throughout the long hours of relentless darkness, the narrative of that fateful evening continued to evolve. The building's inhabitants, once isolated in their private fortresses of apprehension, began to sense a collective vulnerability. Their individual tales of the inexplicable merged into a shared chronicle of confusion and dread, bound together by the common thread of an unstoppable, all-encompassing malevolence. The city may have been engulfed in blackness, but within the confines of that singular apartment building, a living chronicle of the unknown was being authored, one ominous chapter after another. Every moment became a test of resolve, of whether the human spirit could withstand the pressure of an existential threat emerging from the dark. It was a trial by darkness, where the intangible force insinuated itself into the fabric of everyday existence, dismantling the illusion of safety that had so long reigned. The terror was both abstract and all too real, like an echoing reminder that in the absence of light, the mind can become a fertile ground for shadows, dreams, and the forgotten remnants of ancient superstitions. In that forsaken hour, the apartment building transformed into a microcosm of dread, a stage upon which the eternal conflict between human vulnerability and the enigmatic forces of darkness played out in silent, relentless acts. As time inched forward with an almost mocking inevitability, the signs grew bolder and more deliberate. Whispers, soft and indistinct, morphed into urgent murmurs that seemed to be laden with warnings of impending doom. Every crevice of the building seemed to transmit these hushed intimations, as if the very stone and timber had absorbed a secret message from the void. The resident, who had once observed the nocturnal events with a detached curiosity, now felt compelled to assemble the disparate clues into a coherent narrative. The phenomenon was too precise, too structured to be dismissed as mere coincidence. Instead, each occurrence hinted at a meticulous orchestration that might suggest an external intervention, a deliberate, terrifying act woven into the fabric of the city's nocturnal hours. It was in that instance, a moment suspended between terror and revelation, that the true nature of the event began to crystallize. The pervasive darkness was not simply an absence of light. It was a carefully constructed veil, one that obscured a sinister truth beneath its impenetrable surface. Every nuanced detail, from the subtle shift in temperature as shadows moved, to the uncanny precision with which objects defied the expected laws of gravity, pointed to an intentional manipulation of the environment. The apartment building, the attendant fears, and the unfolding series of mysterious incidents were not random anomalies, but components of a deliberate scheme that exploited the cover of night to infiltrate the lives of unsuspecting residents. In that slow-burning hour, as fear warred with logic in the minds of those confined within the building's walls, there emerged an undeniable sense that the event was an invitation to confront long-suppressed terrors. The power outage was but a superficial manifestation of a much deeper malice, a harbinger of change that had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. The darkness, once considered a benign backdrop to the daily routines of city life, now held a secret that was as old as time itself, a reminder that in every flash of light, there exists an equal and insidious counterforce. This counterforce, hidden in plain sight, had seized the opportunity to rewrite the narrative of that night, in a manner that was both haunting. Beneath the veneer of fleeting moments and transient horrors, the specter of calculated intent began to assert itself with an unyielding determination. The building, now more than ever a physical embodiment of fear, began to serve as a crucible in which the resilience of human nature was tested against the unfathomable depths of darkness. The resident, along with the others who had unintentionally become participants in this midnight drama, found themselves confronting the stark reality that the night was not simply a passive entity, but an adversary that demanded acknowledgement and respect. In the absence of the familiar glow of electricity, every heartbeat, Every instinctual shudder in the stillness became a testimony to the enduring conflict between safety and the specter of the unknown. As the endless hour advanced, a peculiar clarity emerged amid the disarray. The interplay of terror and curiosity fashioned a narrative that was as intricate as it was visceral. In the silent spaces between moments of heightened fear, there lay a quiet resolve, a determination to decipher the cryptic signals of the dark, to piece together the puzzle that had ensnared them. The oppressive night, which had so deftly robbed them of the comforting certainties of modern life, now revealed the stark vulnerability of their existence and the hidden order that governed even the most unpredictable of events. By the time the first tentative hints of dawn began to break through the oppressive canopy of night, every resident of the beleaguered apartment building had been irrevocably transformed. The darkness, with its calculated cruelty and enigmatic purpose, had left behind an indelible mark, a memory etched not only on the physical walls, but engraved deeply within the hearts and minds of those who had lived through its relentless assault. In the final, fragile moments before the arrival of light, when the last vestiges of blackness still clung stubbornly to every surface, it became unmistakably clear that the event was more than an accidental failure of technology. It was a deliberate, meticulously orchestrated raid on the sanctity of everyday life, a moment when the balance between shadow and illumination was violently, irrevocably tipped in favor of the unknown. Thus, as the first rays of a tentative morning light began to reclaim the city, the apartment building, and with it the lives of its inhabitants, stood as a silent testament to that fateful nocturnal reckoning. The hour when the lights went out had passed, but its echoes would persist long after the darkness had yielded to day. In that singular moment of terror and revelation, a truth had been laid bare, a truth that would forever haunt the corridors of memory and serve as a solemn reminder that even in the depths of night, no one is truly alone.